2 years ago, she was in one of her first classes as a college student. It was an intro to college class, so there was a lot of talking to the people around her. She met a guy there who at first she didn't like. They kept talking though, and he asked her to go to get the food with him. They got food and officially counted that as their first date. They spent a ton of time together, and he was sleeping over at her places most of the nights.
That summer, we were both living at our parents' homes, and so I drove out every weekend to spend it with him. Last fall, we moved in together with a few of our friends, and then in March 2023, we moved into our own apartment. I was the happiest I had ever been with this guy. It was rough and, looking back, very unhealthy, but I was so goddamn happy. He has very severe ADHD and depression, so I took care of almost all of the day-to-day things. I cleaned, took care of bills, kept us both on track in our classes, and made sure we were both keeping track of what we had to do for social commitments. I burned myself out a lot because I was trying so hard to support him and myself, especially because he never made any effort on his end. I had multiple panic attacks. I have pretty bad anxiety because I put too much energy into helping him and couldn't keep going. But I was happy to do it because I loved him. Back in the spring of 2023, I gave everything of myself to keep him going. He was on the edge of failing another class, and if that happened, he was going to be kicked out of college. So I did everything. I cooked, cleaned, shopped, checked in on him, did things with him to help him relax, spent every second of my days and every ounce of my energy trying to make sure he'd be okay and would get through this semester. During the summer, we both had internships. Mine didn't go well, and I quit 2 weeks in. Shortly after, we adopted a cat. Then he said he had been reevaluating our relationship and wasn't sure he wanted to stay. I was so depressed after this that I almost missed a job interview that ended up netting me the best job I've ever had. I slept for 12 plus hours every day and was basically non functional when awake. 3 days after, he first said that he came back and said that he promised he would never leave me, and that it wasn't worth seeing me hurt like that. A little after, he went out for a family reunion, and I had to stay home to take care of the cat. I was terrified that he would see how much he liked being without me while he was gone. And because it made me so anxious, we agreed he would come back for a day and we would do a date. That was the best day I've ever spent with him. We went hiking, got rained on, and just had a great time. Then he gets back from that reunion and says he wants to leave. We are sharing an apartment, so it gets incredibly complicated with how we still live together but aren't in a relationship. A week later, he says he wants to stay. 2 weeks later, he says he wants to leave again. Another week after, he says he wants to stay. 2 weeks later, again, he says he wants to leave. He again tells me he wants to stay and work things out. Finally, in the middle of September, he says he wants to leave and says that it's never going to work out. I moved back to my parents' house and took the cat with me because he told me to. Only 2 weeks after that, he ends up crying in my arms because he's so lonely and misses me so much and begs me to come back. He asks us to go on a date, and we do. He promised that he'll never hurt me like that again, that he'd always be there for me, and he said he wanted to prove to me that I made the right choice. Every time he said he wanted to leave, I begged him not to. I begged him to talk to me, to tell me what was wrong so I could fix it. I did absolutely everything in my power to try to fix the relationship and get him to stay. So, when he said he wanted me back that last time after sobbing in my arms, of course I said yes. I did make him acknowledge just how much trust I was putting in him, but I went back. I didn't want to lose what I had because I loved it and I loved him. We were planning to have me stay nights at our apartment, but I would mostly be living with my parents. But not even 2 weeks later, he said he wanted me to move out fully. He said he didn't want me and he never would. He said that he was never really happy for those last 2 weeks and that he wasn't ever really happy with me. He said all of this to me on our 2 years anniversary. I was done with being used and then abandoned over and over again, and, this being the sixth time, I lost my temper. I slapped him across the face. He punched me in my diaphragm, and I couldn't breathe. He had a panic attack because of trauma, and I had to call his sister to get her to help him. I did not go back to that apartment, but a few days later his sister began texting me asking what I wanted to keep. They had spent the day packing up all of my stuff and told me I had to come get it at a time and day they specified. They told me that a lot of things I bought with my money wasn't actually mine and that I couldn't have it. My boss is an amazing person and took the next day to help me go get all of my stuff. The guy I was in a relationship with had a panic attack because we showed up when he wasn't expecting us and told me I had to give him my keys. I refused, and he and my dad started fighting because he wouldn't let me take my name off of the lease. Later that week, his sister texted me and called me a heartless bitch and refused to talk to me. I called him to ask him to get his sister to leave me alone, and he told me he hated me and didn't ever want to be around me again. He still has a good chunk of my stuff and still won't let me off of the lease, even though he won't let me live there anymore. And he's demanding I pay rent even though I'm not allowed to live there, and I now have to pay rent for a new place. We are both part of leadership for the robotics team, so I have to see him at least 2 times every week. I'm broken. I never want to trust anyone ever again. And I'm left wondering how much of that relationship was a lie and he just started dating me because he was lonely. He's been dating since elementary school with over 7 exes and was only not dating for 2 months before he started dating me. I gave everything to that relationship and I ended up getting PTSD and being blamed for everything. He's made me a villain and telling me I stole stuff from him, and I stole the cat, even though I only took what I knew was mine, and he told me to take the cat. Now he's using me for my money, and it just burns.